We are truly honored to be part of these great discussions this afternoon. I am Siti Nurjanah.
And I'm Christopher Candland. I know that many people like to take a nap after lunch, so if you'd like to put your head on the table and do that, we won't be offended.
So a gunungan, like the one that you see before you, is shown before any Japanese puppet show performance. The gunungan is the mountain of life through which one can enter into the universe.
Before we tell you about our questions, their significance, our methods, innovations, disciplinary integration, and expected results, we need to tell you something about Javanese morality. Javanese culture is the most influential culture in Southeast Asia. The Javanese are the most populous ethnic group in Southeast Asia, and they constitute more than 40% of Indonesia, which is the fourth most populous country in the world. Most Javanese are Muslim. Many also draw on the moral and spiritual resources of pre-Islamic traditions known as Kejawen. Kejawen morality is embedded within the expectation of the community that individuals will temper their felt, physical, and psychological needs so as to promote and maintain communal harmony. Javanese virtue is powered by the idea that others may regard one's behavior as flawed. To be seen by others to be engaged in flawed behavior is to lose one's claim to selfhood. If a person is not able to act properly, he or she is considered to be and is said to be not Javanese, which conveys that one is not fully human. It suggests that one is subhuman. In Kejawen thinking, virtuous behavior is not necessarily non-instrumental. To bury bad feelings so as to maintain social harmony is virtuous. To give charity with the intention of being seen by one's neighbors with admiration is virtuous. To be patient with somebody so as to strengthen your soul is virtuous. It's also important to understand that proper behavior is virtuous because it's evident of proper feelings, and proper feelings must be accompanied by proper language.
Javanese sentiments are necessary for Javanese moral economy. Community aid events involve obligatory sentiments in exchange, including reserve, respect, and same for volunteer resources such as time, food, money, and labor. Without these sentiments, the mutual aid or gotong royong, not yet, that enable people to celebrate significant events, to build homes, to plant harvest fields is not possible. Without participation in this circulation, one doesn't have a fully recognized self or ajining diri. Javanese believe that only Javanese possesses sungkan. Sungkan is a moral sentiment of respect of other for which one suppresses one's own feelings, so as not to disturb the emotion equanimity of one who may be spiritually higher. Javanese morality is changing rapidly. The long-praised preference for communal behavior, or communal harmony, over individual advancement is under great stress. The moral landscape of Java is being transformed under the twin forces of Islamization and secular consumerism. The satisfaction of the community is being replaced by the satisfaction of the self. And the admiration of one's neighbors is being replaced by the admiration of Allah or God. These satisfactions, the satisfaction of the self and the admiration of Allah, are highly compatible in a way that the alternative, the Kejawen satisfaction of the community, is not.
Our core questions are: to what extent is communal harmony the principal goal of Javanese morality? What forces are driving new and less communal moral repertoires? And how is the Javanese self accommodating these forces? Close ethnographic studies of 3 generations of the same Javanese families, young children, young parents, and their parents will provide insight into the changing nature of the Javanese self, motivation, and virtue.
We see 3 dominant moral repertoires in Java today. We distinguish between the three normative environments, what we refer to as repertoires of morality, dominant in Java today. We assume that individuals can and do blend elements of each repertoire. A moral repertoire is not a closed system. One can use the resources of moral repertoire at different times and in different places, but each repertoire has coherence. The Kejawen moral repertoire, very broadly speaking, is based on the conviction that to avoid social conflict and natural calamity, one must maintain harmony in everyday human relations. The Islamic moral repertoire is focused on individual piety. The secular consumerist moral repertoire values self-satisfaction and individual advancement. It is secular in the limited sense that it believes that some human thought, speech, and behavior can be separated from religion or spirituality. Each of the three moral repertoires has specific implication for the construction of gender. We are also interested in knowing how construction of gendered morality differs between the Kejawen, Islamic, and secular consumerist repertoires of virtue, how constructions of gender are used to mold girls' and women's notion of virtue, and how girls and women can use morality to change gender roles and to make effective claim to greater agency. To illustrate, we can distinguish between the Kejawen, the Islamic, and secular consumerist moral repertoire in child rearing practices. The Kejawen approach permits nursemaid and tincture. The Islamic approach maintains that mother must breastfeed their own children for 24 months. The secular consumerist approach offers baby formula supplements as the secrets to children's development.
We propose to engage in 5 research exercises during 6 months of field work in Java. These are in 3 areas: learning virtue in the home, in the neighborhood, and at school, expressing virtue with polite language, and showing virtue in participation in mutual aid activities. Provincial governments in Indonesia maintain high-quality annual residential censuses that will enable us to generate random samples of households that will be the focus of the intergenerational research that we expect to do in 4 sites.
It is obvious but easily overlooked that the physical environment influences the social environment. Most of Indonesia has a perfect climate for being outside, for keeping doors and windows open at all time, and interacting for each other with their neighbors. People in public and at home are in a close physical proximity. In Japanese family, mothers do most the politeness teaching of infants. The child is in almost constant physical contact with her mother, who uses a long cloth to attach her baby to her hip. One technique for politeness training is for the mother to speak on behalf of the child. Neighbors might address a baby before the baby can speak, and the nursing mother might speak on behalf of the baby using the appropriate language for the speech to an elder. The Japanese mother might speak in highly refined manner, as is increasingly common, or an idiomatically Islamic manner, for example, infusing with Arabic, or an egalitarian manner using Indonesian language. We aim to study changes in the language of this politeness training across 3 generations.
I should have had those on earlier. In a second exercise, we will design and use a psycholinguistic test that assesses participation in moral repertoire by language. We are currently designing such a test that would involve what we have in mind, but we're open to suggestions, is asking strangers for direction using languages that correlate with specific moral repertoires. What we have here is 4 levels of Javanese, and at the very top, Bahasa Indonesia, which we think will invoke rather different responses from people who are being asked for directions. A third exercise relies on the fact that much family-based moral education in Java is conveyed through stories about historic and mythic figures. Our technique is to ask, again across 3 generations, which heroes parents tell their children morality stories about. Is it Abraham, who is used to invoke Islamic values of submission to God's will? Is it Semar, who is used to invoke Kejawen values about compromise? Fourth, we have 4 educational institutions in Indonesia, roughly speaking. The government schools provide both a traditional Islamic and a Pancasila moral repertoire. Pancasila is the state ideology of Indonesia. These are compatible with the Kejawen moral repertoire. Private schools vary broadly, but you'll see that Islamic private schools, which are now very popular, offer Arabic, English, computer and lab sciences, and promise to instill in children an individual piety that will get children and hopefully their parents into heaven. Finally, there are Islamic schools that predate the Western schools, which include the Islamic private schools. These are modern. The Islamic seminaries, the pesantren, have a different curriculum, a different pedagogy. They're based upon a devotional relationship to the teacher, and they convey a highly tolerant and humanitarian set of values. There are 2 parts of our study in this 4th exercise, which I'll just refer to briefly as curriculum. We can do text content analysis of the books that are available, easily available in Java, and we can also do some analysis of the pedagogy. Our 5th exercise focuses on mutual aid activities, the gotong royong activities that Noor referred to earlier. In 4 towns, we will identify individuals who are known to be enthusiastic supporters of gotong royong and those who are known to be reluctant to participate in such mutual aid activities. And we would like to have 4 weeks in each of these sites to study the relationships between these people and their community. We have 4 research sites, Banyuwangi, Jombang, Kepanjang, and Tuban, which are geographically, religiously, and culturally representative.
In terms of deep integration, I think it's pretty straightforward. I am a native Java with training in literature and linguistics. And I grew up in an era without electricity. Maybe it's a little bit hard to imagine at my generation, but it's when storytelling was an important method for teaching virtue.
My graduate training and publications are in Asian studies. We have had a 15-year-long scholarly relationship that began with a mutual interest in women and Islam. Our first collaboration showed how Muslim women in Indonesia were using an Islamic repertoire to transform the Indonesian government's repressive population control program into a family-friendly reproductive health program. Our innovations are for the concept of a moral repertoire. We think allows us to acknowledge that the self is remarkably agile and can move from one moral repertoire to another from day to day or from different stages in life. We would also, and we know we need to do much more work on this, we'd like to advance a linguistic study of ethics. We think that language is ideal for the study of ethics in Java because we think there's no place that has as wide a range of language options or levels of options within a language. Our third innovation is made possible by our familiarity with Javanese culture and language, and that is that we can focus on not individuals but relationships. Finally, most of the research that is done on the self, its development, motivation, and virtue focuses on people of European descent. And we believe that the highly egalitarian and highly harmonious repertoire of virtue found in Java is a more appropriate baseline. I'll move very quickly because I think we only have a minute or so. We are very fortunate that we have an ethnographic baseline from the 1950s. MIT sent 5 couples to Java, and one of our sites is the site that they went to. Perhaps we'll speak to our expected findings in the Q&A. Our challenge, quite frankly, is of designing instruments that will allow us to measure people's participation in these competing moral repertoires. And we've already learned a great deal from all of you. So thank you.
I'll ask you to review your expected findings.
Okay, thank you. Our expected findings are 3, that we believe that we will find that the salience of the Kajawan moral repertoire is in decline. We also believe that we will see that the secular consumerist moral repertoire is not in competition with the Islamic moral repertoire. That in fact, because each of these are based in some sense on the individual, whether it's individual piety or individual advancement, these are highly compatible. That is, so we want to advance the argument that the Islamic moral repertoire is highly compatible with an individualistic, consumerist repertoire. We don't see these as in competition, but we rather see these as complementary. At the same time, we hope that there are suggestions that our research will find, that we believe that people can create moral repertoires intentionally, that these are not simply forces that people have to submit to, but people can create a moral repertoire that is more highly egalitarian, but also more harmonious. That the kind of deference to authority that you find in the Kajawan moral repertoire could be weakened without weakening the other principles that create harmony within the Kajawan moral repertoire. Similarly, we do think that much of the contemporary modern Islamic moral repertoire has kind of shades of spiritual materialism in it. That it's more important for many people to show that they're Muslim to others than it is to really catch the spirit of Islam. But we don't think that Islamization is necessarily antithetical to the Kajawan moral repertoire. We think that the most important finding that we could have is to be able to identify those elements of an Islamic moral repertoire which are compatible with the Kajawan moral repertoire, or at least are not contemptuous of what is considered to be the syncretic, older generation's traditional values. So to be, maybe it's a bit dangerous to go out here, but last night as we were thinking about this, we were thinking that perhaps we really should be able to identify 2 Islamic moral repertoires. One which is a modern, conservative, puritanical, Wahhabian-influenced Islamic moral repertoire, and another which we'll call traditional, which is more syncretic, which is more focused on what we might call the spirit of Islam rather than the letter of the Sharia. So those are some of our expected findings. Thank you.
Owen? We're not done just yet. Hold your applause. Okay, Owen?
Thank you very much. I just was curious about how useful to you, this is just a thinking out loud, demographic data will be, because some of the issues you described, one could imagine that there's, besides global capitalism, there's huge changes in population, I assume, in Java over these 3 generations. Is that probably, am I right about that?
Population growth?
Population growth is what I was thinking of, yeah. And what about the demographic features of the 4 sites that you were using? I'm just curious about that. Do they differ in sort of interesting ways that you expect anything to turn up?
Yes. Right. We have done research sites.
Yeah, there you were.
You were there.
I passed it.
You said-
We've thought a lot about population control in Indonesia over the last few years, and Indonesia is one of those countries which has really been able to lower its fertility rates by promoting reproductive rights and scrapping a population control. So yes, the family itself has changed over these 3 generations. It's not as large a family as it used to be. The 3 sites we've chosen for their geographical differences, but also because 2, Jombang and Tuban, are known to have a very strong historically and demographically Islamic moral repertoire. And the others are more associated with the Kejawen moral repertoire, and all of them have been powerfully influenced by secular consumer values.
Just if I may, just in terms of your thesis about the agile self. I know there have been some studies of Asian Americans and Asian Canadians about the ability to shift between different cultural identities. And so I can give you some of those references if that would be helpful. Okay. Doug?
As I look at your research plan, if I understood it, 5 different sort of projects over 4 different sites, I'd be a little bit concerned, can you really fit this all into a 6-month period? And might you want to expand your field time?
Yeah, it's a good question. We would like to expand our field time. And, depending on the outcome of an application for leave that we've each made, we might be able to do that. What we were thinking, if we have only the 6 months, we would spend 1 month in each of these 4 sites, and then 2 months in Surabaya, which is the capital city of East Java, to write up our results. So we're looking for more time. Nora didn't want me to mention it, but I'll mention it anyway. We feel that being husband and wife will allow us to have to be more productive in our research, because we can talk about this stuff all the time.
Deep integration.
Which we enjoy doing. So,
I would encourage take more time. It always takes longer than you would think.
thank you.
Daniel?
Just in terms of suggestions, I wonder if you know Scribner and Cole's study of literacy among the Bai people in Liberia. It's different, but similar in the sense that they were comparing groups who either have formal schooling or just literacy without formal schooling, and giving them a variety of different linguistic and cognitive tasks. It wasn't focused on morality or virtue per se, but just could be a source of inspiration.
Thank you. We're grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.